Homework 4, Year 5. Again, come to the tuition portal and enter your answers. Let's get into the first section. We've got vocabulary questions here. So what it says is match the antonyms of the words below and write only the letter corresponding to the answer. So match the left to the antonym basically. So peculiar, that means something that is strange. So the opposite of that would be normal. Ooh, hold on. Peculiar, let's look at A, no. G, ordinary, yeah, that would work. So we've only got a few options here. So ordinary seems to be the best antonym for peculiar. So G. We've got insane, the opposite of that would be sane, because in is just a prefix that makes it the opposite of sane. Now queer, so queer is again something strange, and I think normal would probably be the only other option that we've got here. Question 4, assemble, so disassemble should be the one there, which is option A there. Question 5, sane, so the antonym would be insane. We've just gone through that. Raiment. Okay. What we can do with these questions, if we don't know the word, is you can skip it and then continue on. Because I do know what all of these words means. And then we'll find out what the last one actually is. So asunder is when you're apart. So we've got here united would be the best one for asunder. Was that J, right? And malady is an illness, so obviously being healthy would be the correct one. Ramble is to walk, so I guess running would be a nice antonym for rambling, because you're going fast rather than slow. And then broad and narrow are very clearly opposite, and now we're left with the one word that I didn't know, which is raiment, and we'll know what. So unclothed is the antonym, it looks like, because that's the only one left. That means raiment would mean to clothe yourself, I assume. Yeah, so it's basically dressing in decorative clothing. I just looked up the definition, but that is all of the first 10 questions done. Now we're on to the comprehensions.
Question 11. This question asks about the main idea of the passage we read. Think of the main idea like the big picture of all the different things the passage talks about. Our choices are A, the Colosseum is unsafe for tourists. B, the Colosseum's history, name, changing caretakers, and modern preservation debate. C, the Colosseum was only used for gladiator fights. And D, the Colosseum should be fully rebuilt. The passage we read gives us an interesting look at many things related to the Colosseum. It tells us about the place itself, how the name came to be, who took care of it during different times in history, and how people today are discussing the best ways to preserve it for the future. That description fits well with option B, because it mentions all of those key points. Option A isn't right because the passage says visitors can walk through the Colosseum's passages safely when managed well. Option C is too narrow because the text mentions games, quarrying, sacred spaces, repairs, and tourism, not just gladiator fights. And D is incorrect because the final paragraph talks about whether to reconstruct small sections, not fully rebuild the whole thing. So the correct answer is letter B. Moving on to question 12, this question asks about the language where the name Colosseum comes from. The choices are A, Greek, B, Italian, C, Latin, and D, French. The passage specifically mentions that the name comes from Latin and that it is related to the word colossus, which means colossal or enormous. So the correct answer is letter C, Latin. The other languages, Greek, Italian, and French, Are languages linked to the history and regions around Rome, but the passage directly names Latin as the source for the name Colosseum. So the answer to question 12 is letter C. Question 13 asks about which group did not control, use, or guard the Colosseum, according to the passage. Our choices are A, the Roman Empire, B, the Papal States, C, the Italian state, and D, the Ottoman Empire. The passage clearly lists the Roman Empire, the Papal States, and the Italian state as powers that had some connection to the Colosseum over time, whether it was filling it with games, protecting sacred spaces, or restoring sections in modern times. The Ottoman Empire is not mentioned at all in the passage. Therefore, the correct answer is letter D. Let's move on to question 14. This question asks about what Emperor Vespasian is famous for, according to paragraph 2. Our choices are A, writing a history of Rome, B, beginning the Colosseum's construction, C, defeating Carthage in battle, and D, designing Rome's aqueducts. Paragraph 2 clearly states that Emperor Vespasian is famous for beginning the Colosseum's construction in the AD 70s, so the correct answer is letter B. Option A is not mentioned. Option C, defeating Carthage, is from a much earlier war and is not linked to Vespasian in the text. And D, designing aqueducts, is not mentioned in the passage either. So the answer to question 14 is letter B. At question 15, the question asks, based on its use in paragraph 4, the word contend belongs to which word group? The choices are A, argue, claim, maintain, B, celebrate, praise, applaud, C, mend, repair, restore, and D, calculate, measure, estimate. The explanation tells us that in the passage, some people contend that carefully rebuilding small parts helps understanding. Here, contend means they argue or claim this view. Therefore, the answer to question 15 is letter A. Now, why not the other choices? Celebrate and praise don't fit a discussion or debate about something. Mend and restore are about fixing things, like physical objects, not stating or arguing an opinion. And D, calculate and measure, those are more math or science words, not for discussing ideas. Now let's look at question 16. The question says, which idea best reflects the author's viewpoint in the final paragraph? The choices are A, tourism should be banned at ancient sites, B, governments always protect monuments well, C, cultural heritage can outlast power and ownership, and D, rebuilding ruins makes them more valuable. The final paragraph says that heritage, like the culture and memory of the past, can outlast rulers and owners, and that beauty and memory survive longer than the hands that built or taxed them. This means that culture and memory last longer than political power. So the answer to question 16 is letter C. Now, why not the other choices? A is too strong because the author only says crowd pressure and pollution must be managed, not that tourism should be banned altogether. B is not correct because earlier in the passage, it showed different rulers with mixed actions towards ancient sites. D is not right because the paragraph doesn't claim that rebuilding automatically increases value. It focuses on what survives over time.
Okay, so my father's house. Let's look at the questions. We've got question 17. The narrator in the passage can be best described as a teenager. Well, no, because he's got kids, so he's likely not a teenager. An adult remembering a traumatic event. a child describing a house he or she knew, an adult looking back on his or her childhood. Okay, so it's not his or her childhood that we're looking at, because he's got fond memories of this house, but it's not particularly his house. He's talking about the house that his father actually grew up in. And yeah, so what else have we got here? A child describing a house he or she knew when he or she was younger. So again, the narrator is not a child. An adult remembering a traumatic event. It's not this one either. So instead of crossing out D, I'm going to look back at D. We've got two options here that we can cancel out immediately. So teenager and child. The narrator is neither of these, because you can see the narrator has it says the narrator has his own kids, so he's likely an adult. So we've got two options here. It says adult remembering a traumatic event in his or her own life, or an adult looking back at his or her childhood. So if we look at the actual, if we read the whole passage, there's nothing traumatic about it. It's talking about his grandpa building the house and it being his father's house. So it's not option B. Option D would be the best option here. When it says looking back on his or her childhood, we can think about, basically it says when he was a child, he used to get told things about his grandpa basically building that house. And I think there are some other, so let me look at some other sections in the passage. Again, you can see I was a child, right? And he's got some memories of the actual house. And yeah, that's pretty much why the answer here is going to be D. So question 18, according to this passage, how many bedrooms did the father's house have? So we've got, up here it says a 3-story 6-bedroom ranch house. So it should be option C. Question 19, according to the narrator, why does he or she continue to say that his or her grandfather built his house by hand? Now, so what it says here, where is it? So yeah, so basically later on in life he learns that his grandpa didn't actually build it by hand, but he paid others to build the house. And he says, even today I still tell my own kids that he built it himself, because it was his crowning achievement in life. So he says, why not tell the legend that outlives the truth? Why not let the legend outlive the truth? And so question 19 here is that the grandfather insisted the house was built using his hard-earned money. Grandfather built the house brick by brick. We know he didn't actually literally do that. And the grandfather could no longer afford to upkeep the house. That is true, I believe, if we read onto the passage, but that's not why he's deciding to actually continue saying that it was built by hand. And again, it's not really option A here. Again, it says option C, the grandfather is proud of the house. That is exactly what is mentioned in the passage. It was his crowning achievement and he was proud of it, and that's why he wants to continue saying that he built it brick by brick. So option C is the answer there. Question 20, it can be understood from the passage that the narrator is all of the following except what? So we've got nostalgic, traditional, greedy and respectful. So there's already a sense of nostalgia if he's thinking about his past, so I do think he's nostalgic. Traditional, let's see some evidence for traditional. You could say that because it's hard to give actual evidence for traditional, but you could say, like, from the general idea of the passage, he seems traditional because they lived in like the countryside, etc. Let's skip that one for now. Let's look for any evidence of greedy or respectful. So respectful, I think actually, respecting that it was his grandfather's proudest achievement right here, and continuing to tell the legend, you could be saying that he's respectful. So I wouldn't say he's not respectful. We'll have to be the greedy or traditional, which one is he not? Now, I don't think there's any real evidence to say that the narrator is greedy, and I think there's more evidence to say that he's traditional, so I'm going to stick with option C as the answer to this. I mean, the general tone of the passage isn't even trying to present the narrator as greedy, so we'll stick with option C. Question 21. The word suburb, as used in paragraph 3, means what? So suburb is highlighted here. So if you think of the suburbs of London, if you think about the urban area of London, that's like directly in the middle. So that's like central London, right? Canary Wharf. So the suburbs, I mean, it's not the village or the country, it's not directly the city, it's actually more the outer city. And it's likely where you might live, somewhere on the outskirts of London, near like Sidcup, Bexley, stuff like that. So that is the end of the second comprehension. Let's move on to the choose the best word. So once upon a time there lived a king and a queen who had no children. They something very much for a child, so probably wished very much, or longed, there we go, longed very much for a child. And when at last they had a little daughter, they were both delighted, and great something took place. So if they're very delighted, a great something took place, probably some sort of party or rejoicings, I think is the best word here. When time came for the little princess to be christened, the king made a grand feast, and something all but one fairies to his kingdom to be godmothers. So probably invited, I think. There we go, option D is up here. There happened to be 13 fairies in the kingdom, but as the king had only something gold plates, he had to leave one of them out. So what was it? It said 13 fairies, so probably 12 gold plates, which is why he left one out. And then we've got the little princess, so these guys presenting them with the best gifts in their possession. Seems to work well there. So gifts that they actually owned. One gave her beauty, one gave her wisdom, etc, etc. Just as the last fairy was about to step forward, there came a something knocking at the door, so probably loud knocking at the door, so I'm thinking tremendous knocking at the door. In a furious something, so basically in came the 13th fairy in a furious something, so probably rage, there we go, furious rage, for not having been invited to the feast. When she saw all the gifts which the other fairies had presented the child, she laughed and something. So it looks like there's a colon here, and there's another speech mark, so exclaimed seems to be the best one there, because she's about to say something. A lot of good, all this beauty and something and wealth. Okay, all this beauty and, say, virtue, the only one that would work there. And wealth, my pretty princess, you shall pay for the slight your royal father has put upon me. Then turning to the terrified king and queen, she said in a loud voice, when she's 15 years old, she'll prick her finger with a spindle and die. And then she flew away. So the king and the queen were something. So what have we got here? Were in despair. Yeah, that seems to make the most sense. And the courtiers stood aghast. Okay, that's the end of this. So we've gone through this entire one. That's the end of this. Choose the best word. Let's move on to the grammar, capital letters. Okay, choose the sentence with the correct use of capital letters. So now, Aunt Jane, because it's a proper noun here, it should be capitalized. And you can see C can't be it because Sunday isn't capitalized, and this one doesn't have Tom or Mary capitalized. So we've got option B. Question 33. Last Sunday the school closed and remained closed until Monday. So last Thursday. So Thursday has to be capitalized, so it can't be option B. The school shouldn't be capitalized, so it can only be option C here. Question 34. The Queen of England has reigned for a long time. So England should be capitalized, and Queen should also be capitalized. So we've got option C. Friday and good should be capitalized because it's a holiday. Shrove should not be capitalized. I didn't realize it said Shrove Tuesday. So that should actually be capitalized because again it's a holiday. So it shouldn't be option C. And again Christian should also be capitalized. So we've got B as our answer here. Now we're on to question 36, spelling. We've got its or its. Which one should we use? So we've got it. This means it is, and this is more just like its. And you've actually got this right here, explanations. So its spine protected it from from wild predators. So again, this its is used when it's belonging to something. So its would work best here, meaning option A. It is not certain for weather, so that should be the option B. It is a long way from Alaska, so it should be option B. It is time to leave, option B. And it is a shame he left without goodbye. So it would be option B again. Alright, question 41. So Sean loved playing football according. So that should be double C here. And available should be spelled like that. And then recognize is spelled like this. Foreign. And especially is spelled like this. Decimals. Okay. So add the following decimals. So adding decimals is very simple. You add normally, you just bring the decimal point down here. So if you do 2 plus 1, we've got 3. We've got 8 here. 0 and 3, so that's our answer. Question 47 here. We've got 6 plus 9, that gives us 17. 8 plus 8 is 16. Add the 1 is 17. And 1 plus 1 is 2. And this one's 3. 32.7. Sorry, that was, I think it's 9. There should be 5 here. 9 plus 6 is 15, that was my mistake. So 32.75, there we go. Question 48, we've got 5 and 8, that gives us 13. This one adds to 5, this one adds to 0, and this one is 15. We've got 150.53. 49, got 8 and 3. This is 11. And then 7 plus 1 is 8. This one gives us 16. And then this one gives us 6. Hopefully, if you're stuck on any of these, hopefully you're following along, you're just adding the columns here. And if you have to carry one over, you add all of these, so the 4 and the 3 and the 1. Okay, subtracting, same idea, you just bring the decimal point down and you do 2 minus 8. So 2 is much smaller than 8, so you need to borrow from here. So we turn this into a 2 and we make this into 12. So because we borrowed 1 from here and we moved it here, so it's 12 minus 8 now, which is 4. 2 minus 1 is 1. This is also 1 and this is 2. So we've got 21.14. This one you can see we have to always line up the decimal points whenever you're adding, because then we can bring the decimal point down. So this is actually 0 minus 3 and 0 minus 4. So we actually have to borrow 2 things from here. So what we'll get here, we bring this down to 5 and then this is borrowing the 1 and this is also borrowing the 1. So we've got 10 and 10. Now that gives us 7. This gives us 6. And now we've got 5 minus 8, so this has to borrow from here. We've got 15 minus 8, which is 7. And then we've got 2 minus 5 again, we have to borrow. So this should turn to 8. This is going to be 12. And we've got 12 minus 5 here, which is going to be 7. And then 8 minus 0 is 8. And I believe that should be our answer. I made a mistake there, I think. So this one you can see the decimal point always has to line up. So we've got 0 and 0 here. And 0 minus 3, we have to borrow, right? So let's borrow. We can't borrow from the 0. What we can do is we can borrow from here. Make it into 6. Now this is 10. And now we can borrow from this, turn it into 9. And then this will have 10. Now, so if we do 10 minus 3, we get 7. 9 minus 4 is 5. 6 minus 8, we have to borrow from here. 16 minus 8 is 8. 2 minus 5 doesn't work, we have to borrow again. So 12 minus 5 is going to be 7. And then we've got 8 here. So 878.57. Question 52. Borrow from here because 5 is smaller. 15 minus 9 now. So that is 6. And 7 minus 7 is 0. Bring the decimal point down. 2 minus 0 is 2. And 6 minus 4 is also 2. Alright, with this one again, it's a decimal point here. And there's a 0 that we can't see. 0 needs to borrow from here to make 10. So we've got 3. And 3 minus 1 gives us 2. So 2.3. Alright, multiplying numbers now. So to multiply this, it's very simple. You can look at how many zeros there are. If you're multiplying by tens, hundreds, or thousands, there's 3 zeros here. So what we can do is we can just move the decimal point. 1, 2, 3. Now you can see there's a gap here. We have to fill that in with a 0. And if the decimal point is here, right, we've got 151,620 point something, point 0. So our answer here is basically just 51620. And looks like you've got 0.00 here at the end. Question 55. This is just 1 0, so we can move it once. So that'll be 403.9. This one is 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be 30740. And as you should know, if there's a 0 behind the decimal point, it's still the same number. You can add infinite number of zeros here. It's still the same number. So 56, the answer is this one. 57, we've got 1, 2. So that should just be 4013. Again, 0.00 is the same number. Now we can divide by hundreds and tens. Same thing, but you move left now when you're dividing. So we move left, oh sorry, it should be only 2 times. Because it's by 100, so that should be 0.2867. There we go. This one is 3 times. So it should be 0.05742. This one right here. This one. And this one's only 1, so it should be 7.778. This one's only 1, so it should be 5.028. There we go. Hopefully that all makes sense. Now we've got multiplying actual decimals rather than just by 10s and hundreds. So these ones are exactly the same as well. You multiply it normally, and what you do is you count how many numbers are behind the decimal point. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So whatever final answer we've got, we have to have 4 numbers behind it. 4 numbers behind the decimal point for our final answer. So let's do this multiplication normally. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 5 here is again 30, but add the 3. You got 33. I should carry that. My mistake. And then 6 times 8 is 48 or 42, I think. It's 48. And then add the 3, will give us 51. Then we move on, add a 0. Now you do 7 times 5. So 7 times 5 is 35. I'm just going to cancel these ones just to make sure. And now we've got 7 times 5 again. Add the 3, so it's going to be 38. Now 7 times 8, which is 56. Add the 3 is 59. And now we go to the final one, which is the 2's. So 2 times 5 is 10. And 2 times 5 is 10 again, with added the 1 is 11. 2 times 8 is 16 now. So we have to carry the 1 again. 16. Add the 1 is 17. Now we can add all of these together. 8, 9. And this is 6 plus 9 is 17. And then 6 plus 7 is 13, and then 2. So that's our final answer right there. Oops, so 5 plus 9 plus 1, this is 15, not 17. So there we go, that's our final answer, and like I said, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 here. 4 numbers behind decimal points, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4. So our answer should be 23.5980 as our answer. And you can see none of these look like that, but if we look at this option right here, 23.598, that's the exact same, but we've just got a 0 here. So it doesn't actually matter if there's a 0 there or not. Like we said already, you can have loads of zeros or you could have no zeros. If the final number is a 0, then you can ignore it. Obviously if there's a 0 like this, 5.01, you can't just ignore that 0, but you can ignore the 0 that's behind the 1. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, question 63 now. Let's do the same thing. So we've got 27 for this one, and then we've got 9 times 6 plus the 2, which is 56. And then we've got 9 times 7 plus the 5, which was 68. Add the 0. And then we've got 8 times 3, which is 24. And then we've got 8 times 6, which is 48. Add the 2 is 50. You got 8 times 7, 56. Add the 5 is 61. There we go. Now you've got double zeros now. So now we're going into 8 times 3, 24 again. 8 times 6. Again, same thing, 48. Add the 2 is 50. And then 8 times 7 is 56. Times, add the 5 is 50. Is 61, sorry. And now we just add these together. We got 7, 10, and now we've got 5 plus 8, which is 13. Got 7 plus 1, which is 8, and you got 7 here, and 6. And now again we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers behind the decimal point, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4. So put a decimal point there, you can rub this out, and that is our answer. And you can see, here is our answer. Okay, question 64, divide the following decimals now. This is, again, very similar to normal division. Oops. If we do 3, how many times does 3 go into 1? It doesn't, so how many times does it go into 19? 6 times, right? So we put 6 at the top, and we put our answer down there. And then we minus it, we'll get 1. 3 doesn't go into 1, so we have to bring the 2 down. 3 does go into 12, 4 times. And then we put the answer down here again. And that gives us 0. 3 doesn't go into 0, so we can bring the 3 down. 3 does go into 3, 1 time. And then the answer here is 0 again. We can bring the 8 down. 3 goes into 8, 2 times, and the answer for that will be 6. And if we minus these two, we'll get 2. Now, does 3 go into 2? No. But you can see this number is now behind a decimal point. So we can bring it down, but what we have to do is we have to pull the decimal point up here. So now we've got a decimal point here. And now we've got 27. So how many times does 3 go into 27? 9 times. And then again, we finish that off. And we have no remainder, and that is our answer, 6412.9. Same for this option, this question. How many times does 7 go into 35? Because it doesn't go into 3. We got 5 here. Gives us 0. We can bring the 3 down. Doesn't work. We can bring the 5 down. What we have to actually do here, because we brought it down, you can see we got a 0, and then we already brought 1 down, and 7 still doesn't go into it. So to bring the next 5 down, we have to put a 0 here, and that allows us to do another bring down, which will give us 5. And then how many times does 7 go into 5? So 35, it's 5 times. Again, we carry this on, put the answer down here, give us 0. Now we bring the 1 down. Again, you can see 7 doesn't go into 1. And to bring another number down, we have to put a 0. And this time, we also got a decimal point here that we have to do before we bring down. So we bring the decimal point up, and now we can bring the 4 down. So 7 into 14 is 2. And now we've got our answer here, 5050.2. Question 65 is done. Alright, 66 now. Compare the following decimals. So which one is bigger or smaller or equal? You can see these two are the same number, so it should be equal. This one is bigger because 78 is bigger than 77. Now this one is 0 point something. It's much smaller than 5 point something. This is bigger than 5. This is smaller than 1 and bigger than 0, right? So this is the smaller one. The left is the bigger one. So this one, again, 6 is bigger than 0 point something. So left is the biggest. Alright, question 70. A quick one on that. Easiest way to think of this is 0 point something is like somewhere in between 0 and 1. Right? 0.5 is in between 0.1, 0 and 1. 6 point something is in between 6 and 7. So which one is bigger? Obviously this one, because this is much smaller. Hopefully that makes sense. Question 70. Round the following decimals to the nearest tenth. So the nearest tenth means like 3.1 or something like that. That's a tenth. If you think about 1/10 is equal to 0.1. So this place right behind the decimal, that's nearest tenth. So we have to round it to this sort of section, or to 1 decimal place. So if we look at the 4 here, that has to round down. 5 rounds up, 4 rounds down. So this should actually be 3.5. This one, sorry, question 71. Again, the 3 rounds down, so it should be 7.7. This one, the 4 rounds down, so it should be 3.8. And then this time, the 6 rounds up, so it should be 4.6. Okay, now round to 2 decimal points. So we look at the one behind the second decimal point, which is this one. Does this round up or down? It rounds up, so it should be 9.83 instead of the 2. This one should round down, so 9.32. You can see this should round up, so it should be 9.35. And this one rounds down, 1.45. So when you say round to 2 decimal points, there should only be 2 decimal points behind in the answer, right? Okay, converting between fractions and decimals. Got 9 over 10. So if you think about for anything over 10, I mean the easiest way to think of a decimal, this is equal to that, or 9%, right? So if you think about, let's say 10 over 100, that is 0.1. So if you sort of get that gist, I think that should make sense. With difficult fractions, what you can do is you can do the actual division, so 10 divided by 9. And if you complete this division, you'll actually get 0 point something, which will be your answer. But with simple ones, like these ones, where they actually convert directly very easily, I like to just think of like, if I made this into 100 at the bottom, it would be 90 over 100, right? So that's like 90%, or 0.9. So that would be option B. Question 79, again, this is like 30%, 3 out of 10, and that's 0.3. Again, if you think about 0.1 is 10%, 0.2 is 20%, 0.3 is 30%. If you keep going up by 10% each time, you get to 1 after 10 of these. Hopefully I'm not confusing you with these ones. But question 80, we got 2 over 4. This is half. You can see this is half. You can see the 2 is half of the 4. So 0.5 is 1/2, right? Between 0 and 1, this is 1/2. 0.8, we've got, I like to again, oh, so we're converting backwards now. So think about it, all numbers are over 1, right? Even if I say 2, that's actually over 1. So if we do this, 0.8 over 1, That's our fraction right there. But obviously you can't have a fraction with a decimal at the top. So what I can do is I can times the top and the bottom by 10. That'll give me 8 over 10. There we go, you've got a fraction that actually looks normal. If we simplify that, it gives us 4 over 5, which is option A. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. This is A, this is C. Alright, and then this one, again, over 1. If I make it, it'll be 4 over 10. And that will simplify it to 2 over 5, which is option B. You got 83. 0.85 over 1 again. So this time, to make this into a normal integer rather than a decimal, if it times by 1,000, it looks like 1,000. 1, 2, 3. So we got 875 over 1,000. Now we have to actually simplify this to a normal one. So how many times does 5 go into 875? So you can do this with long division. You'd get 175. And then 5 obviously goes into 1,000. I believe it's 200 times. So that's simplified a bit. We have to simplify that even more. So how many times does 5 go into 175? 35 times. And how many times does 5 go into 200? 40 times. And now we can keep simplifying that even more. 5 into that is 7. 5 into 40 is 8. And now we've got our answer, 7 over 8. So you can see you can just keep simplifying using one number. And that gives us option B. So hopefully that makes sense for the decimal section. With these ones, you just make it over 1 and then you simplify the fraction. With these easier ones on the left side, pretty simple fractions, I like to think of them over 100, then sort of think about what percentage they are, and think about how that converts to a decimal. So it's really good to know things like 0.5 is equal to 50%. This is going to be really useful to make you super quick in your maths. Like 0.15 is 15%, and you should be able to see the pattern is quite simple, right? 0.95 is 95%, etc., right? So this is really useful for you to know. And then obviously if you're able to convert one of these to like over 100, then that's easy to make that into, like, that's 3% very, very clearly, which is also the same as 0.03. Right? Sorry, 0.3, not 0.03. Actually, no, it is 0.03. I was right. Anyway, let's move on to the next. Let's move on to the next section now. NVR analogy now. So we've got basically left shape turns into the right shape, and we have to apply that rule from here to here. So if you look at how does the left shape turn into this shape, we've got the black shape, or the black heart turns into a white heart. So how does the black, what's going to happen to this one? It's just going to turn from black to white. So option B is the best option there. Oh, I forgot to do question 84. I thought that was an example. Same here, this is white to black and this is white to black, so it should be option D, because this is the wrong pentagon. And so this one was option B. Now this one is the same, this one left to right is just getting smaller. So ideally from here, it should just be the same shape but smaller. So these aren't the same shape, they're pointing the wrong way. This is the example shape, so option B is the right answer here. We've got left hand, that turns into a right hand and it also switches colour. So left foot should turn into a right foot and it should also switch colour, which is option C. Okay. From here to here, it seems that the shape is reflected and then it adds or removes a line. So you can see one line is removed. So let's reflect this. Can't be this or this or this. And it should remove a line. So it should only have one line, which leaves us with option C. Question 89. Again, this is the same thing but just reflected across this line. So if you reflect this, it should actually be pointing like this, right? It should be pointing that way. So it shouldn't be any of these. And the pentagon here hasn't been reflected correctly. You can see the pentagon is still the same way. So C is the right answer there. Question 90. we've got an arrow that's pointing down. It's rotated 90 degrees clockwise. So if we rotate this one 90 degrees clockwise, it should be like this, which is option E. Question 91. This is the same shape but reflected. It looks like the arrow is changed a bit, but let's just reflect this initially. That can't be any of these ones because they're not reflections. Now this one has a circle in the wrong position, so it could be either of these two. Now the pattern is also reflected, so this one, the pattern should be facing this way if you think about how it would be reflected down this line. And D is going this way, this was going the right way, so B is the right option because of this line. Question 92. So this one is rotated 90 degrees anti-clockwise. So this shape is going to have to rotate 90 degrees anti-clockwise, meaning the arrow should be pointing like this if you think about these two. So let's cancel out option D. Also the small side of this trapezium should be on the right. It shouldn't be B. Also if we look at the triangle, 90 degrees anti-clockwise, it should actually be, the triangle should be like this. So we can cancel out option C and option E. So we're left with option A. Question 94. So we've got the left shape rotating 90 degrees. Sorry, 180 degrees clockwise. So if you rotate this one clockwise, sorry, anti-clockwise, it looks like 180 degrees, you get this shape. So let's try and rotate the example shape. It should have a trapezium that looks like option A. So B and E are actually facing the wrong way, and the circle would actually be on the top, the black circle. So it can't be these ones, and option D is the right answer there. Question 95. This one seems to be rotated 90 degrees. So let's rotate this 90 degrees. Can't be any of these options. The shape inside is turned from black to white, so it shouldn't be B. And one extra line is added to the top, so this should have two lines, meaning it's not A, but it's D. Question 96. It looks like this is reflected across a vertical axis, like this, sorry. And let's reflect this first. It only leaves us with two options, right? If we reflect just or even the whole shape, right? We've either got B or E. Now what else changes here? Once you reflected it, the shape would actually be like this. But you can see this sort of, I'd call this a cup, or this like half rectangle. This one is rotated after it's been reflected. It's rotated 180 degrees. While the balls or the circles stay in the same place. So I'm going to assume the triangles are going to stay in the same place, similar to these circles here. And this sort of thing here is going to get rotated. So actually, we have to unrub out A, because what's probably happening here is, if you look at, again, it's this shape that's getting rotated even after it's been reflected. So if you reflect this, you'll have arrows pointing this way. And then if you rotate it 180 degrees like happened to here, you'd have them actually pointing the other way, and you'd have the triangles up here, right? It'd be 1 and then triangles and then 1, 2. So actually option A is the correct one. You can see the back shape is the one that gets reflected, or everything gets reflected, and then the front shape, or this sort of semi-half rectangle looking thing, is the one that gets rotated after that. Hopefully that makes sense. Option A is the correct answer there. If that didn't make sense, try and rewatch that section to understand the explanation. So this was D. Oh, 94 was D, and 90. It looks like the numbers are a bit messed up. I'll fix that. But 95 and 96 was A. Right, now we're on to hidden word. Verbal reasoning, 11 plus hidden word. Okay. So you just have to find the word that is hidden between the start of one word, the end of one word, and the start of another word. So you've got a sentence here. Best thing to do initially, if you want to do these fast, you want to just scan between these sections, right? So you can see there are, just try and see if you find anything. So I see chi, that doesn't seem to work. You got thon, nope, onth, careful, nothing there. Again, make sure you, so this one is a 4-letter word, it says. But there's 5 letters in the example, so let me just double check this. So this is supposed to be 5-letter words that we have to find, so I'll edit the instructions. But initially we didn't find anything between the gaps. But while I was looking at this, I saw chi. If I look a bit closer, instead of using the C, use H-E-A-R-T. There we go, we've got our word right there, heart. So, second one. Again, I'm going to look between the gaps. Like, if you just focus your eyes between the gaps, sometimes you can see a word immediately, sometimes you won't. So you can see ton is a word, but that's not enough letters. Honest isn't a word, and oh, there we go, we've got one hero right there. So it looks like it can be a 4 or a 5-letter word. Again, I'm looking at the gaps. When you've got something like this where you got GHT, not many words, or pretty much no words start with GHT, so you know it's not going to be something like that. Or even TS, not many words start with TS. So you can sort of skip that gap, but you can look for the next gap, and I can see something right there. We've got game in that gap. Again, we've got ETTH. It doesn't really look like a word. You can't really make a word out of this gap. For this one, Heov or Eov, no, it doesn't seem to work. Now here I can see vent. So that'll be the answer right there. Okay, we've got some extra questions now. So now it says match the antonyms of the words below. So margin, which one is an antonym to this? Well, let's look at the options right here. The margin means, like, if you think about the margin of a paper, it's like the edges of a paper, right? So defended, it definitely isn't an antonym, neither is civilian or insignificant. So within, the closest we've got, and I think it's basically aiming towards this idea that it's going to be within rather than on the margins, which is sort of the exterior. So on the middle or inside is within. For question 102, you got rank. Now, if we think about something ranked highly, it's probably significant, so I think that's what they're getting at, with insignificance being the antonym. The other two are a bit simpler here. You've got besieged. That just means that, for example, if you're besieging a castle, you're attacking a castle. So besieged would be being attacked, or attacked, and defended would be the antonym for that. And then soldier and civilian would make sense as antonyms as well. So those are our answers right there. Question 105. rewrite the sentence using the correct capital letters. So we've got here John Smith and Michael Murphy. This one's correct. Cousins doesn't need a capital. Mary and John Brown are my friends. Yep, Mary needs a capital. These both need capitals because they're proper nouns. Rich does not need a capital. Uncle Tom's, no, again, new car doesn't need a capital letter. It's not a proper noun. Correct capital letters. So the lecture was given by professor. So professor is, I mean, this is a proper noun because this whole thing is his name in a way. Professor Makutsi. So you want to capitalize all of it. Fill in the blank now. Okay. So you've got it's summer, or it is summer, and the swallow has returned to its nest. So this would be a possessive its, because it owns the nest. So it should be apostrophe its for the first one and possessive its for the next. It has been a long time, so that would be apostrophe its. Its, so this is a possessive one. Its white tail bobbed up and down as it scurried into its burrow. So both of those are possessive, so it should be both. And we've got it is not often we have seen an otter in its holt. So this is a possessive one, and this is an it is. So that should be apostrophe and then no apostrophe. When it is winter in Europe, it is summer in Australia. So it should be double apostrophe. There we go, we're on to 116 now. Which one is spelled correctly? Sincerely. So sincerely should have an E right here. And it should be a C as well, so it shouldn't be this one. This one's missing an E. And we've got a crooked, or was that awkward? Whispered the boy with an awkward smile. Okay, so awkward is spelled with 2 W's, awkward. We've got a vegetable, so it should be vegetable. This is the right one. Okay, we're on to more decimals now. Alright, 78.92 added to 65.16. So if we add the 6 and the 2, we get 8. If we add these two, we get 10. And then we have to carry the 1. 1 plus 8 plus 5 is 14. And then we've got 7 plus 7, which is 14 again. So that is our answer. Question 120. You have 7 plus 2, which is 9. This is 8. 1 and 14. So 141.89. Now we're minusing now. So again, 0. 3 minus 8 doesn't work, so you have to borrow. And makes this 13. And then if we minus that, we should get 5. And 6 minus 8 again, we need to borrow. 16 minus 8 is 8, and then 6 minus 5 is 1. Again, bring the decimal point down. We've got 18.5. 122. So now imagine there's a decimal point here. 0 minus 3 doesn't work, so we have to borrow. So we can't borrow from the 0. Let's borrow from the 5 first to make this into a 10, and then we can borrow from here to make this into a 9, and this will be a 10. So now 10 minus 3 is 7. Bring the decimal point down. 9 minus 0 is 9, and then 4 minus 0 is 4. So you got 49.7. Okay, question 123. Where is it up here? So again, times 10, you just move 1 to the right. So it should be 3.5. For this one, 1 to the right, so 711.1. This one is 1, 2, 3. there's a 0 here. 12760 is our answer here. And this one is just 536.2 because we move it 1 to the right. Question 127, divide it by 1000. Okay, so that means you go left 1, 2, 3 times, and again fill in the 0 here and the 0 here. So it'll be 0.0, there we go, 0.024. This one only once, so it should be 6.9. And this is moved left twice, so it should be 0.2343. This one, 1, 2, 3, so it should be 0.089. And we've got 131 now. So we're doing actual multiplication without it being times 10, etc., right? So with these ones, we have to, again, normal multiplication, and then just check, look, there's 2 numbers behind the decimal point, so we move 2 to the left. So let's do the multiplication here. And then let's add them up. And then you got 2 numbers behind the decimal point, so it should be 1, 2, you got 3.06. Sorry, I forgot to add this 0 here. So if I actually, let me rub that out, because I forgot to add the placeholder, so there should be a 0 here, and then we do 4, and then we do 20, and now if we add it we get this, and then again 2 numbers behind the decimal point, so we've got 21.42. So for the rest of these I'm gonna use a calculator to find the answers of the multiplication, but then I'm gonna go through how many numbers the decimal point should have. So 2.6 times 7.6, if you do this multiplication you'll get 1976, and then you've got 2 numbers behind the decimal point, so you put it here. With this one, 3.1 times 6.1 will give you 81891, and again 2 numbers behind the decimal point, so we've got 18.91. With this one now, if we do this multiplication we'll get 2392. Again, 2 numbers behind the decimal point, you can count them right here, so it should be 23.92. Question 135, we've got 8. Alright, let's do this multiplication. This should come out to a big number once you've done this multiplication, but now we've got, let's count the numbers, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers behind the decimal point. So we have to put the decimal point here. You can see 4 numbers behind it. So 30.7328. And this one will give us 333,799 as our answer, and then the 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers behind the decimal point. So we put the decimal point there, 33.3799. Question 137. So these are divisions again. You do these normally until you reach the decimal point, you just place it upwards basically. So how many times does 7 go into 25? You skip the 2 because it's too small. So how many times does it go into 25? 3 times, 21. Gives you 4 as a remainder. You have to bring down the 6, and how many times does that go into 46? It'll be 6 times. 6 gives you 42. And then if you do that, you'll get a remainder of 4, and again we bring the decimal point up now. I've already placed it there, and we can bring the 0 down, and this goes into it 5 times. Sorry, I'm writing over into here, but again remainder here is 5, and then we bring the 6 down this time, and it goes into it 8 times, so you got your answer right there, 36.58. 38 here, we got 9 into 15 is once, remainder here is 6, sorry. Bring the 2 down, so 62, that's 6 times we can go into that. And then the answer, or the remainder here is 8, we bring the 7 down, 9 goes into that 9 times, remainder here is 6. Now we bring the decimal point up and we continue on to 68. 9 goes into that 7 times, 63 here, remainder. 5, and then we bring the 4 down and 9 goes into that 6 times, and there's no remainder there. That's our answer. Final one. 6 into 6 one time. Bring the 3 down, and now you can see the 6 does not go into the 3. So what can we do? There's nothing. I mean, we have to put a decimal point here, and that allows us to bring the next number down. So we've got 6 into 33. So obviously we don't have to move this decimal point up, we already got a decimal point. So 6 into 33 is 5. And move this down. 6 into 31, 5 again. And 6 into 12 is 2. So 6 doesn't go into 3 here. So what we have to do is we have to add a 0, and that allows us to bring the next 3 down as well. Now we've got 33 here. That 6 goes into that 5 times. Because we haven't brought anything else down just yet, we can straight away bring the 1 down. But you can see it's behind the decimal point, so we have to put that up there. And then we've got 6 into 31, which is 5. 1, and then we bring the 2 down. 6 into 12 is 2. There we go, there's our answer, 105.52. Question 140. We go 3 into 15 is 5. And then we have to bring the 2 down. 3 doesn't go into 2. So what we have to do is put a 0 there, and now we can bring down another one, which is 9. 3 goes into that 9 times, and that will give us 27. And then we bring the 2 down. 3 into 2, 22 is 7. And then we bring the decimal point up. And we bring the final 2 down, and 3 into 12 is 4, and that's our answer. Okay, question 141. So which one is bigger or smaller? The 0, the one with the 0, is smaller than the one with the 2. So this is the bigger one, left. Always look at the places and compare them. So these are the same, and then look at the next one. These are also the same. Now look at these two. So 2 and 1, which is bigger, but 2 is bigger than 1. Again, we can compare the first places, then the second places. This side is bigger because 7 is bigger than 6. Immediately this side is bigger, and the same with this, and the same with this. So that was right, left, left, right, left, left, left. Okay, 147. Round the following decimals to the nearest tenth. So a tenth is 0.1, it's this place, this is the tenth, this is the hundredths. So we have to round to the nearest basically decimal point. So this 1 is going to round down to 2.1. This one is going to round down again, 7.4. This is a 6, which is bigger than 5, so it rounds up to 8.4. This one rounds down. So anything that is bigger than 5 rounds up, anything smaller than 5 rounds down. And 5 also rounds up. So again, you always just look at because we're rounding to this place, you look at the one number behind it, and does it round up or down? If it rounds up, you change this to a 4. If it rounds down, you change it to you leave it as a 3. So what have we got here? 2.1, 7.4, 8.4, and 8. Oh, my mistake. This one says 2 decimal places. So we actually have to look at this section, and this one rounds down, which is why it's 8.31. And this one should actually be 8.40, because again, we're looking at this one. And does the 9 round up? Yes. So this has to turn into, actually, it should be 8.37. So there we go, we selected this one, 8.37 and 8.31. Now into question 151. Convert between fractions and decimals. So as we said before, think about what it is as a percentage. So this is a half, right? If you simplify it, it's just a half, and that means 0.5 or 50%. This is 1/5, so that is 20%, or 0.2. So 20%. Why is that 20%? Well, if you times 20 by 5, you get 100%. If you times this by 5, you also get 100%. Hopefully that makes sense. This one now, 2/3. You should know 1/3 is always 33.3333%. So 2/3 is 66.666, meaning this one is going to be 0.66. I think I showed the other method to do it earlier in the video when I was going over the previous question, so if you need help on that, go back to those. This one's going to be 0.33 again, because 1/3 is 33%, 0.333. So let's select these. Yeah, so you can see why it says 0.667 is because if you keep going 666, you have to round it at some point, right? So if you round it here, then you get 0.667. If you round this one here, it just rounds down, so it should be 0.333. 7/10, that's just 70%, or 0.7. This is actually the same as this, so you can see that's 2/3. 0.75 is 75%, or 3/4. No, 0.625, so this is a bit more difficult here. Let me select these answers quickly. .625. So what we can do is we can think about just 625 over 1,000. Instead of it being 0.625 over 1, do 625 over 1,000, and then we can simplify it from there. So how many times does 5 go into 625? So 5 goes into 125 times, and the bottom 5 goes into 1,000 200 times. So that's our new simplification. If we do it again, we've got 25 for the top, and I think 5 into 200 is, I think it's 40. Then if you simplify that again, we get 5 and 9, I believe. Sorry, 8 I meant. There we go. 5 over 8, and there we go, that's our answer. So you can see, you just make it into a big fraction, then simplify it until we get it. So every whole number is just something over 1. So this is just 0.8 over 1. Now you can times the top and the bottom by 10, which is what I did above. I actually did it by 1,000, but that gives us 8 over 1 as our fraction. 8 over 10, sorry. And obviously you can simplify that, because I did times both by 10, right? You can simplify that. 8 over 10, you do the top by 2, that'll give you 4. If you divide the bottom by 2, that'll give you 5. So 4 over 5. With these ones, try and rewatch it a few times if you're still not getting it. And always a good idea to watch back to the sections I was doing above as well. 0.25. This is very clearly 25%, so you have to, I mean, it's a good idea to be able to recognize that. 25%, or just 1/4. 25% is 1/4. 50% is 1/2. These are things that are useful for you to know. Okay, NVR analogy. 161. So from here to here, we rotate 90 degrees. So let's rotate the example shape 90 degrees. And also it changes color, so if we change the black to white, we get C instead of E. Now, this one we've got a hexagon, or sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8-sided shape turning into a 4-sided shape, meaning it's halving. So a 6-sided shape probably turns into a 3-sided shape, which is one of these. Also turns from white to black, so it should be E. This one, the circle seems to squeeze and get a bit smaller. So let's get a squeezed up square or a rectangle. The shape in the middle stays the same, so it shouldn't be E. And changes color from grey to black, so it should be B. We've got here triangle stays in the same place, but the arrow at the top gets reflected and goes down. So this triangle should be sort of like this. The colors also switch, but let's cancel out any of these, right? There should be no circle there still. You can see the right shape, this one just vanishes. Now what else happens is the pattern swap. So this should have the same pattern, the dotted pattern from the triangle. So option D is the answer. Question 165. Question 165. So this one is rotating 90 degrees to the right. So this one should be pointing to the right. You can see the circle seems to come out of the shape. So this one, circle should be outside of the shape. And actually, oh, I was mistaken. It looks like it actually rotates 90 degrees anti-clockwise, because you can see the black, right? Oh no, it does. No. So it rotates 90 degrees clockwise, and the black and the white swap, right? So you can see this. This would be black if it didn't swap. So the black shouldn't be at the top, because after it swaps, it should be at the bottom. So option B is the answer there. 166. The outside shape goes to the top, it gets reflected. So we should have something like either D or A. Looks like the left or the white shape turns black, so the white circle should turn black. The other shape gets reflected and stays in the same place, so it should change color. Not A, it should be D, because again, triangle changes color here. 7, you can see from here to here, the only difference is this gap basically turns into its own shape. So I'm thinking if we do this gap, it should be something like this. So it'd be a shape like this. It can't be C because it hasn't got this little ledge in, or D. And it can't be E because you can see this wouldn't fit in. If you look at this shape, right, the shape that we've got over here, that doesn't match E. So you've got B or A. They seem to both be the same shape, but it would have to have the right stripes. B is facing the wrong way, so it should be A. 168. Looks like the P is just rotated 90 degrees, 180 degrees. So if you rotate the K 180 degrees, you have something like this. So we can cancel out these ones. You can see this is actually just a reflection of the K, that's not rotation. So it should be B. 169. The grey seems to turn black, the white turns grey, and the black turns white. So let's do that one by one. The black should turn white, meaning it can't be D, black shapes. The white shapes need to turn grey, so this one should be grey. Cross these out. And finally the grey shape should turn black, so this one should be a black triangle, which is A. 170 seems to rotate 180 degrees, this one. Inside shape stays the same, so this arrow should be pointing upwards, and it should swap colour, so it should be black. Inside shape should stay the same, so it can't be B or D or E, so you're left with C. 171 we've got here. This triangle seems to rotate 180 degrees, and then you've got this triangle. So this is what I'm seeing. So I think this triangle, or maybe not, because I don't see any of these options that are just a triangle. So let's go back. It does keep the two circles, right? But everything gets smaller. I'm trying to think was actually what the change is from left to right. You could say it's just this little section that is taken. So it'd be something a bit like this section that gets taken. That's not in any of the options though. You have to think, how do we get from this looks like a trapezium shape into a triangle? One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like what happens is we keep the top shape, which is this line. So you're going to keep this triangle, which should be these ones, and then you just add this isosceles to the bottom, this triangle to the bottom, and then in the triangle you have these two circles, and you have this little thing at the bottom of it, right? So you have these two in here, 1, 2, then you have this section added to the bottom. So you can see this grey triangle is moved here, it's made smaller and put here. This, alright, so this trapezium is basically made smaller and put here, and then this line is put here. So I think the best way to say it is these elements, they're stacked on top of each other. So you've got this trapezium shape here that is basically here. You've got this triangle, which is, if I use a different color, down here, and you got this thing is here. So what we're doing here is you're putting the triangle here, and then if I use a different color here, we're going to put this triangle to the bottom, and this outside shape, which is a trapezium, the white trapezium, you put it here. And there you go, you've got option A. It's a bit of a tricky one, that one, but that seems to be the only one that works. So, right, last few questions now. Verbal reasoning, hidden word. Again, just scan between these gaps until we can find something. So I can see it already, term. And you can also always check the options to see. So you've got he, no, maybe rope, there we go. Test. So literally just scanning between the gaps until I can, something shows up, right? To tesh, no. Again, this is like a gap where there's unlikely to be something there because you've got a W there. Again, to do, no. And then Deut again doesn't work. Okay, so I have to go back and look. I can also look at these options right here. So show, slow, and snow. Alright, there we go. You've got show right here. So of course you're not given options in this paper, but in the actual exam you will be given options like this. So, my friend, there we go, drip. And I'm looking at this gap, nothing there. And you got desk right here. Okay, that is the end of homework 4.